Mike Huckabee, Howie Kurtz break down the videotape. And also tonight, the Christmas police are back. We just have an excuse to use our Christmas police little video thing, which I really love. But how the U.S. Postal Service canceled one family stamp over a claim that the stamp was too religious at Christmas. Waiting till you see this. You will not believe it. But we begin tonight with this. Donald Trump making a stand for his wall. It's what voters wanted, but leadership stood in his way. Trump is now forcing the hand of Democrats, threatening a shutdown.
I've made my position very clear. Any measure that funds the government must
a claim that the stamp was too religious at Christmas. Waiting till you see this. You will not believe it. But we begin tonight with this. Donald Trump making a stand for his wall. It's what voters wanted, but leadership stood in his way. Trump is now forcing the hand of Democrats, threatening a shutdown.
I've made my position very clear. Any measure that funds the government must include border security. Has to. It is the solemn promise to protect and defend the United States of America, and it is our sacred obligation. We have no choice.
Joining me now are two Republicans engaged in this fight. House Majority Whip Steve Scalise, he's in charge of wrangling these votes, and Congressman Sean Duffy of Wisconsin. Plus, Fox's chief political correspondent Ed Henry joins us, too. He's been following all the developments. Congressman Scalise, let's start with you. You have the votes, but the Senate looks shaky, to say the least. How are we headed for a shutdown tomorrow?
Well, first of all, Laura, I think it was a really important day today when Nancy Pelosi last week was in the Oval Office with the president, Chuck Schumer, and she said, Mr. President, you don't have the votes in the House to fund the wall. And today we put up a massive vote with a large margin of Republicans that said, we're going to stand with this president. We're going to fund the wall. And we just gave him serious leverage in whatever negotiations he's going to have with the Senate. They have to confront this issue knowing we have the president's back in the House.
Sean, a lot of my listeners on radio today and then tonight, they're watching and they're thinking, how are we always in this position? It's the end of the year. Everyone's rushing to get out of town. It's like no traffic in D.C. Everyone's already gone, except you guys are there. We're here. But everyone is already gone. In their mind, they're gone. And Paul Ryan said, we're going to fight. We're going to have a fight. We're going to have a conversation about the border wall. 2 years from the House majority, 2 years the Senate majority. We wait until the end of December to deal with an issue that the American people want dealt with.
Yeah, I mean, first of all, I think we were set up to lose here. We were not set up to win. We should have had this budget fight last week on Friday.
How about last spring?
No, but still, as we're coming to the end of the year, we could have done it last week. Or better yet, we could have even done it this Tuesday, where we would have passed a bill that funded the border wall before the Senate acted. But we were going to act today, Thursday, the 20th of December, right before the end of the year, 2 weeks before Nancy Pelosi takes over, and think that we have leverage. This is idiotic. What we should have done, Laura, is we just passed a bill on criminal justice reform. Why didn't we negotiate criminal justice reform, which Democrats want, which we'll get no credit for? Why don't we negotiate in exchange for criminal justice reform? Give us $5 billion in border security. No one negotiated that deal, so we have no leverage, and Republicans lose.
Until you raised that tonight, we were talking earlier, I'd not even thought about that. I mean, the president did not run on criminal justice reform.
No.
I'm personally glad it passed. I'm going to be really anxious to see how it works out. You're not. That's fine. But he isn't getting credit for it. He won't get credit for it. But if you want to use it in a way that advances the Trump agenda. Ed Henry, hold on. Ed Henry has information now for us about where things stand in the Senate. Ed, I tweeted earlier. Everyone's got to follow my tweets all throughout the next 48 hours. I said earlier that Mitch McConnell should fight for this wall as hard as he fought for Kavanaugh. And actually, it's probably more important in the long-term survival of the country.
Well, remember, he only needs 51 votes. I've been talking to Senate Republicans in private. What they're saying is they're hopeful they can get to 51 votes to pass what the House Republican leaders there are talking about, Congressman Scalise and Congressman Duffy as well. But the challenge, I'm being told, is that you have Republicans like Bob Corker. You mentioned there's not a lot of traffic. Some of them have gone home already. Bob Corker told Fox tonight he's retiring from Tennessee. He's already driving home to Tennessee. That's his plan anyway.
It's a disgrace.
They're not planning to stick around. Now, will they be pulled back because the wall funding? We'll see. But I've talked to sources inside the White House, by the way, who tell me, think about it. Put yourself in the shoes of President Trump. He was told that we're going to repeal and replace Obamacare. He was told we're going to have wall funding. He was told that we'd eventually get out of Afghanistan and Syria once we defeated ISIS. And you go down the list, and a lot of these priorities that he didn't just campaign on and promise, but he actually won on in 2016, he hasn't been able to follow up on. Look at the tariffs. Establishment Republicans, time and time again, people inside the White House remind me, told the president, don't do it. And Congressman Duffy will be the first to tell you that but for President Trump standing up against Canada, the dairy farmers in Congressman Duffy's district wouldn't have been helped there in Wisconsin.
Yeah, so time and again, the president's instincts on these issues, Ed just took us through a couple of them, were spot on. He was pulled back from his instincts by the experts. I think some of them were foreign policy experts that are now thankfully gone, or Treasury experts. His instincts on this are right. And I want to play something for everybody. You got to watch Chuck Schumer. They're playing a big game there on Capitol Hill today. This is what he said about the shutdown. Watch.
President Trump is plunging the country into chaos. And he said in front of us he'd be proud to shut down the government. It is nothing to be proud of. The bottom line is simple. The Trump temper tantrum will shut down the government, but it will not get him his wall.
Congressman Scalia's temper tantrum. I don't think so. I mean, he campaigned on this. He won on this. He deserves the Republicans to get behind him and also put the Democrats back on their heels. Okay, you say you're for border security. $5 billion? Yeah. That's what we're arguing about, $5 billion?
Or this looks like another Schumer shutdown. And think about this. A few years ago, Chuck Schumer voted for a border wall. He's going to have a hard time reconciling that. If you listen to what he's saying, he's making it personal. He doesn't want Donald Trump to get money for the wall because he doesn't want Donald Trump to get a win. The American people see Donald Trump fighting for them to secure the border. It's about border security. It's been about this throughout his campaign. He won on this issue as one of the front and center issues. And so now he's actually doing it. If Chuck Schumer wants to sit there and say, we're going to have a shutdown, try to blame somebody else for it, the American people know this is about border security. You're for it or you're against it. We have people in the caravan who are known criminals. They're attacking our Border Patrol agents at the border. Let's actually stand up for them.
He says, oh, we're worried about chaos. Oh, it's chaos. Spend real time, not just the photo ops they do when they go up to the Border Patrol people and try to usher in migrants across. Real chaos. The Tijuana government knows what chaos. Mexico has seen the chaos. The cartels are being enriched by all this. Chuck Schumer, chaos. That line is so tired and old. I want you to chime in here, though, because Nancy Pelosi said this earlier today, and I got you to respond. Last week.
There are no votes in the House, a majority of votes, for a wall, no matter where you start.
Exactly right.
You proved her wrong.
I think I just want to check the vote list. We just passed $5 billion.
Yeah, you proved her wrong. Could Schumer be wrong?
Steve Scalise did a great job counting the votes.
You whipped it. Yeah. Could Schumer be wrong as well?
He could be wrong. But Nancy Pelosi is more concerned about her votes to become the speaker as opposed to the votes to do what's right for America and secure the border. But think of this, Laura. We have agreement on all the funding, but for the $5 billion for the wall. That's the only thing that's holding up funding the government versus shutting the government down. But I look at Chuck Schumer out there talking to the American people and Nancy talking to the American people today. Donald Trump has to do an Oval Office address. He has to frame this issue.
I've said this for a year.
And he has to talk about, we got to talk about the families that have lost loved ones to the drug abuse that comes across the southern border, meth and heroin. In my community, all our counties don't have money because they're spending so much money for out-of-home placement for kids who've lost their parents because of drug abuse. Or the parents who've lost a loved one at the hands of an illegal immigrant. Frame the issue about America. Yeah. Take away the photos of the kids at the border with the tear gas.
Personalize it. They personalize it. They say the death of the 7-year-old girl is on your shoulders.
On average, every single day we stop 10 known or suspected terrorists from coming into America. Last year alone, our ICE agents, who are in the middle of this fight too, saved over 900 kids from human trafficking. Those are real kids who are saved today because of what we're doing to secure our border. Who knows how many got in that we didn't catch? So thank God we have President Trump fighting to secure the border.
Yes,
that's what this fight's going to be about. Him having an address would be great.
Sean's absolutely right. I've begged him to do this for a year. On air, I've said, this is the most important issue to the American people today. It's the government and immigration. Those two issues are the top of the list for the people. The government, meaning working against the people, and immigration. That's it. Got to address the country on this.
And this is the only
not tweets. Address the country. Lay it out. I'm sorry, I'm going to harangue on this, but it's really important. I want to get to some other big news of the day, the Mattis resignation, because by the reaction in the hours following, you would have thought that we just decided on an imprudent ground invasion into a foreign land. For instance, here was Nancy Pelosi and Chuck Schumer.
Everything that indicates stability, everything that indicates strength, everything that indicates knowledge is leaving this administration. General Kelly, General Mattis, so many others.
McMaster.
McMaster, exactly. There is chaos now in this administration.
I am shaken by the resignation of General Mattis for what it means to our country, for the message it sends to our troops, and for the indication of what his view is of the Commander-in-Chief.
Here's a message it sends to our troops. You're coming home. Okay, that's a message it sends to your troops. The days of Bush interventionism is over. That's where the president ran. And Obama went through 4 secretaries of defense. I do not remember the freak out. And I thought Pelosi and company were for pulling troops back once we actually have victory. Now they're the interventionists. I'm really confused about where they are.
When the president's for something, they've been for a long time. They don't want to admit it on trade and other issues as well. I think you made a really important point a moment ago about Senator Schumer as well and pushing the chaos narrative. It's sort of like every time there's a development in the Mueller investigation, we hear the walls are closing in. This is it. And then it sort of fizzles out. Here's the bottom line, though. I don't think you can sugarcoat the fact that Mattis leaving is a big development because his letter was pretty blistering in terms of his differences with the president on Syria, for example. Here's my bigger point. Watch what Lindsey Graham is saying tonight. He has been an ally of the president, as you know, in recent days on a whole range of issues. And he's warning, don't make the same mistake that Barack Obama made in terms of pulling out of Iraq, that you could have a terrorist safe haven in Afghanistan. But I also hear your point, Laura, which is it gets back to what I said at the top. The president campaigned directly in 2016, not just on repeal and replace and trade and the tariffs, but he also said we're not the world's policeman. He was honest about that in terms of Syria and Afghanistan, which is now, by the way, the longest war ever.
17 years. We still have men and women
on that.
Guys, everyone has to reframe, okay? Because we're watching Schumer with his glasses down on the end of his nose. We're supposed to think he's really serious about this, okay? Remember what Donald Trump campaigned on. Let's watch.
We're getting out of the nation-building business. Our moments of greatest strength came when politics ended at the water's edge. We have created the vacuums that allow terrorism to grow and thrive. I want to help all of our allies, but we are losing billions and billions of dollars. We cannot be the policeman of the world.
He won, in part, on a non-interventionist platform. Obama beat Bush on a non-interventionist platform. And you have people like Adam Kinzinger running around town acting like it's like 2003 all over again. Steve Scalise, Mattis has a different point of view than the president on this. Well, that's why Donald Trump is elected president. Mattis wants to run for president? Go run for president. I found that letter to be surprising coming from him and a little dismissive. I didn't like it.
You only have one commander-in-chief. And look, the president and Secretary of State Tillerson had some differences on foreign policy, and so Rex Tillerson left. Mike Pompeo came in, and he's doing a great job representing our country and the president. He'll find somebody else to serve in this role. It's an important role. Secretary Mattis did a great job of helping eviscerate ISIS, and they're not going all the way.
They want to stay. They don't want to leave. But when we go, they don't want to leave. He's going to be able to find another general who's going to be able to serve this country well as his defense secretary. The line is always, if we leave, chaos will ensue, which means we can never leave because we're in these countries that are, by their very constitution, very chaotic.
But it's a light footprint there. 2,000 troops, not engaged in battle, but giving more advice to the
So why are we there? Why is it a national security interest? We beat ISIS.
Because I think if we leave, I think you can reinstate ISIS.
We're going to be there for everywhere. Well, let's take a poll of American people.
What happens with Russia? What happens with Iran? I mean,
what happens in Russia? The economy is smaller than France's, right? What are we worried about Russia for?
But do you see the territory to them? Do you see the territory to Iran who wants to kill the big Satan America or the little Satan Israel?
How much money has China spent in Iraq and Afghanistan?
I don't know.
None.
Probably none, right?
Yeah, and when we're 20 trillion.
But you're at the point. The president's the commander-in-chief. He gets to call the ball, and he deserves a staff around him that supports him.
Yeah, so. It seemed unnecessarily petty of an American hero, Mattis, and I thought that was surprising.
But you know what? I think that we have the right to disagree. In our party, we don't all fall in line. We can have different opinions, and we can debate it, and we can.
We'll see if Bushism works in 2020. We're going to see if we can go back to Bushism, and that's going to sell the American
we don't want to go there.
Yeah, we're going to see if that works.
President Trump is rebuilding our military, and that's something he campaigned on.
Yeah, but he's not squandering the military
on that promise as well.
Yeah, he's not squandering the military. Guys, thank you so much.
Thank you.
And I want to get to a tragic but important story outside of Washington. It relates to what we're talking about. And we have to tie this all together for the American people. A community ravaged by the lack of action on the part of our government and local government, state government, who just turned their backs on them. What are we talking about? Visalia, California. It sits between L.A. and San Francisco. And in that town, over the course of 2 harrowing days earlier this week, Gustavo Garcia, he's a man twice removed from this country, went on what authorities call a reign of terror. It's a 24-hour shooting spree, killing at least 2 and injuring many more.
Deputies taking gunfire from this man, 36-year-old Gustavo Garcia. It all went down on Road 140 and Avenue 256 early Monday morning. You can hear the officer reloading his gun as bullets ring out.
Now, while the circumstances of this are tragic on their own, the run-up to it is even more so. 2 days before this reign of terror, he was arrested by the Tulare County Sheriff's deputies for being under the influence of a controlled substance. He was held in the county jail for about 10 hours before being released, even though ICE officials had issued an immigration hold on him. You see, this arrest wasn't Garcia's first brush with the law. He has a violent criminal past.
Immigration and Customs Enforcement tells Fox 26 News Garcia had been deported twice. In the past, the sheriff's office could have alerted immigration because of Garcia's extensive rap sheet, which includes armed robbery more than 15 years ago.
Now, you might be asking yourself, why did the cops let him go despite the ICE hold, especially given his past? So was it the police's fault?
ICE did file a detainer as soon as it learned of Garcia's arrest Friday. And this would be enough to keep him in custody in other states. But Sheriff Boudreau says his office no longer recognizes those detainers, and it can't reach out to ICE for misdemeanor crimes.
Tulare County Sheriff Mike Boudreau said before SB 54, which is the sanctuary state bill, Gustavo Garcia would have been turned over to ICE officials. That's how we've always done it. After SB 54, though, we no longer have the power to do that. We should note the Tulare County Board of Supervisors voted to adopt a resolution opposing California's sanctuary state law in May of this year. And even though it's kind of symbolic, it does show a citizenry standing up for common sense. Joining me now is the Tulare County Sheriff Mike Boudreau. Sheriff, I know our viewers across the country are watching this and they're shaking their heads going, how can this happen in the United States of America, where we emote morning, noon, and night about the tragic circumstances of people who are trying to come into the country? And I get it, they're tragic circumstances. It's tough. But yet the politicians, did you get a call from Pelosi? Did you get a call from, from Gavin Newsom? Any other, officials in California concerned about what's happening there?
The only phone call that I got was from the ACLU demonizing the actions that we took, which is really unfortunate. Tulare County is how it's pronounced, actually, but in Tulare County, that's fine. We're an agricultural community. We produce multi-billion dollars worth of agriculture that's sent all over the world. And we have a large undocumented community. But we also have a large group of people who don't commit these types of crimes on a daily basis. I think what our focus is on is the criminal element that ends up in my jail, that I no longer have the tools to reach out to ICE, my counterpart, my law enforcement partners, and I'm no longer able to recognize the detainer through the sanctuary state law, as well as the Ninth Court Circuit indicating that the detainers don't meet due process. So because of those two combined efforts, we no longer can telephone ICE and even ask the question, why is this detainer placed? Nor can we recognize the detainer itself. And I think
hold on, Sheriff, hold on. Can you give a heads up to ICE? Can you give them a heads up? Can you give them a heads up? Can you call and say, we're about to release this individual, or we have this individual in custody, even if they can't come and interview him or examine him? Is there any notification at all you could give to ICE?
We're not allowed to talk to our counterparts under these laws.
What's the conservative lawsuit against this? This is just an outrage. Hold on, I got to play something for you, Sheriff. This was Nancy Pelosi's claim about what sanctuary policies actually accomplish. Watch.
Our city of San Francisco is a sanctuary city, and we see it as a place where it makes us safer. It makes us safer because people can go to school, they can get driver's license, they can be witnesses against other violence that they see in the community.
Is your community feeling safer tonight?
They're not feeling safer. But I will say that we're not against our undocumented community. We're not against immigrants. We're not against Dreamers or DACA. And I think that it needs to be very clear, you know, our community as a whole, even our undocumented community. I sat with a large group of people, and they're not afraid of their law enforcement. They're not even afraid of being deported.
So that's a lie, Sheriff. That argument that I hear parroted to me morning, noon, and night every time we deal with one of these sanctuary policy cases. We did this in New Jersey a couple of weeks ago. The advocate that came on said, oh, no, we're not going to have immigrants cooperating with authorities. They're not going to show up and testify in cases. That's just bunk. But this is the parroted line. So you don't see that at all in your community.
That's not true. We don't see that. We see our community reaching out to us. What they're afraid of is that the criminal will return to their community because we can't report them to ICE.
Yeah, and commit domestic violence, rape, burglary, robbery, other offenses against property and people. Sheriff, thank you for the heads up and for speaking out on what we are going to be following all throughout the next year, because so many people won't do it. We're going to do it. All right, coming up, when our leaders fail, Americans begin to take action into their own hands in a good way. An Air Force veteran and triple amputee is finding his own way to pay for the border wall. He's going to tell us about it next. America's quintessential can-do attitude. Whether their leaders fail them, our citizens take matters into their own hands. Enter Brian Colfax. He's a triple amputee Air Force vet who started a GoFundMe page for the wall, the wall that the politicians don't want to fund. And he started this just 3 days ago. In that short time, he has already raised more than $9.7 million. Now, here to tell us why he did this, what he hopes to achieve, is Brian himself. All right, Brian. Now, the critics will say that this is just a publicity stunt. It's not going to even make a dent in the total cost, which would be at least around $20 billion. I'm not great at math, but that's a pretty tough hill to climb. So what do you say to those critics?
I say that they're full of crap, and this is the United States, and we can do anything we want. And if people want to donate to that wall and give their money, they can do it. I mean, what's $80 for 60 million people? The common person can give that kind of money. And this is not just about Republicans and conservatives. There's an outpouring of Democrats that are messaging me and giving to this wall fund. It's from both sides of the aisle, but you don't hear the liberal media saying that. This is America coming together. They want the wall, and they're putting their money where their mouth is, and they're funding it.
Well, you've had some run-ins before with Facebook, I know, on blocking various counts you've had, even a military beer business you had to give 10% of your profits to military charities. You're a triple amputee, Air Force veteran, and yet Facebook's had like a kind of an aggressive attitude toward you. I know you've hired counsel trying to fight them on this. Are you seeing any resistance to your postings? I've gotten a lot on my Facebook page, and I've sent them out to my friends. But are you getting any resistance at all in the social media community?
I'm not allowed on Facebook anymore. My company, Military Grade Coffee Company, was outright banned, and Facebook executives told me I'm not allowed to use it. And they threatened my wife to delete her account if they catch me on Facebook. So I don't use Facebook anymore. I've gone to Twitter, and that's where people can find me. And it's ridiculous the way that these companies treat people. And Americans are just pissed off. They're pissed off in general, and they're mad with the way politics and politicians are handling things, and big tech, and it's a lot of problems that are bubbling up right now, and it's just a culmination of things, and Americans are just not happy.
Now, why the wall? Why is this an issue for you?
Well, I mean, the wall is an important thing for me. I mean, I feel it's near and dear to my heart, and it was a promise that was made to Americans, and this is a very important part of our nation, our country. We need security. We are a nation of laws. We need to enforce these laws. We can't have people coming across our border who are unchecked that we don't know who they are. I mean, we could have another terrorist attack tomorrow. It doesn't take many people to stage an attack. We need to know who's coming across that border, and we need to keep it in check. And this, like I said, this wall's in our Constitution. We need to have the wall, and Americans want the wall.
What do you mean the wall's in our Constitution? Where in the Constitution?
Well, what I mean. It's part of our nation. It's part of our laws.
You're talking about our sovereignty, our sovereignty.
Yeah, sovereignty.
Right?
We're a nation of laws.
The wall itself is not in the Constitution.
Trump wall is not in the Constitution.
Yeah, but I get what your point is. He made the promise, And if that wall doesn't get built, it's hard to see Trump winning in 2020. I know people don't like hearing that, but if this wall doesn't get built, I think it's going to demoralize a lot of people. We're going to have more problems. You got to get the thing built. But Mike, Mikhail Gillette, I don't even know who this person is, but it's some singer I guess a lot of people follow, was hitting you pretty hard on Twitter saying the following. Right now in America, people are donating money they don't have to build a wall they don't need to solve a problem that doesn't exist. And I guess the band Airborne Toxic Effect, basically saying you're bad at math because it would take, till 2086. Yeah, you're racist, bad at math. I mean, there's no real substantive argument against why a wall may or may not work, but I'm sure you're going to get a lot of that.
Oh, I mean, that's just the liberal tactics and the liberal media. They're going to come out and attack me. They're going to come out and attack my family. And it's just, they can go ahead and do what they want, but we're not stopping. We're going to keep on pushing through. If, no matter what Congress does, if, they pass this through, we're not stopping. We're going to keep pushing this through. We're going to see what Senate does. We're going to see how this plays out. And, Americans aren't happy, and they're going to keep giving to this GoFundMe, and we're going to keep pushing it.
$9.7 million. It's one of the top GoFundMe efforts in just 3 days in the United States for the whole year. Brian, we're going to be following this. Thank you for your service to this country. You suffered greatly for our freedom, and you continue to inspire so many people. Thank you so much. We really appreciate it, and Merry Christmas to your family. And now on to some troubling revelations inside a Florida court. Documents filed yesterday show us this. The publication BuzzFeed was sued after they published the bogus dossier on President Trump. But they won in court. But that's not actually the interesting part of the story. Inside the filing were revelations about certain Republicans that will shock a lot of you. First, a longtime associate of the late Republican Arizona Senator John McCain, initially provided a copy of that infamous Steele dossier to BuzzFeed in the first place. And second, a Paul Ryan aide and Congressman Adam Kinzinger were given an early look at the dossier before others even became aware of it.
Welcome back to this special edition of Hannity, Law and Order in America. Tonight, we're continuing to learn more about the infamous Trump dossier. As a new court filing says, it was an associate of the late John McCain who shared the unverified document with the news outlet BuzzFeed in 2016. Also developing tonight, NBC News is reporting that Mueller could wrap up the probe as soon as mid-February and submit his report to Acting Attorney General Matt Whitaker, who's been cleared by the DOJ to oversee the special counsel. Now President Trump's pick for the AG job, William Barr, sent a memo to the department earlier this year expressing deep concerns to Deputy Attorney General Rod Rosenstein about Mueller's inquiry into alleged obstruction of justice by the president. Despite this development, our own Catherine Herridge reports that Rosenstein is still not expected to appear before House lawmakers this session. Joining us now for reaction is author of the terrific book, The Russia Hoax, Fox News legal analyst Greg Jarrett, along with attorney David Schoen and Republican Congressman Bob Goodlatte. Greg, I'll go to you first on this Barr memo. You've read the memo. I've read the memo. It is a manifesto on how ridiculous it is to charge the president or even think about charging the president for obstruction of justice on what is essentially a personnel decision in the firing of Jim Comey. I find it incredible the Democrats are in celebrating this memo. Your opinion on it?
Well, you're right. This is the document, a meticulously well-reasoned analysis of the law of obstruction of justice. It is not, as Chuck Schumer said today on the floor of the Senate, a reason for disqualification of Barr. To the contrary, it's actually a very good reason to confirm somebody like William Barr. And he lays out how the firing of James Comey is not obstruction of justice. The law is very specific on obstruction. I devoted an entire chapter of my book to it. It has to be a corrupt purpose that involves a lie, threat, bribe, concealing of evidence, destruction of documents, or falsifying information. The firing of James Comey is none of those things. Even Comey grudgingly admitted in his testimony before Congress the president was entitled to fire him for a reason or no reason at all. So, again, the media and Democrats that say, oh, Barr must recuse himself or he's disqualified, frankly, they don't know what they're talking about. They've never read the recusal regulations in the Code of Federal Regulations.
David, I'll go to you next. Your legal opinion on this ridiculous obstruction charges. Well, I think you know where I stand, given how I set that up. But this seems utterly outrageous to me. Jim Comey was up on Capitol Hill and was asked specifically if he felt he was obstructed in his investigation into Mike Flynn, and he said no. The president also, when he asked Jim Comey about the Mike Flynn case, said, I hope this can go away. He said hope. He didn't say make this go away. He in no way obstructed the investigation. How do we know that? Because General Flynn already took a plea. So is there any legs to this obstruction thing, or is William Barr correct in his memo?
William Barr is correct. It's absolutely outrageous. William Barr's memo ultimately is about Article II power of the president. And the irony is the previous administration exercised probably the most robust power for the president that we've seen in decades. The idea that this should be a disqualifying factor is absolutely wrong. And we don't want an attorney general from Mars who hasn't given serious thought to serious issues like this. Let me say this. It's time for Mr. Barr or Mr. Whitaker to act appropriately under the regulations. Special Counsel Regulation 600.7 gives them the authority and the obligation to demand an explanation for every inappropriate investigative or prosecutorial step the special counsel has taken. It's time for them to get on board. The regulations contemplate a person who gives serious thought reining in an outrageous special counsel. Mr. Whitaker, Mr. Barr need to do what Mr. Rosenstein has refused to do.
Congressman Goodlatte, with regard to Rod Rosenstein, he seems to be living on in a government in and of himself. I don't know if he's some extra constitutional power, has been a member of the Justice League or whatever it may be. But Rod Rosenstein seems to just be telling you all to pound sand. He doesn't want to go up on Capitol Hill. He doesn't want to talk. Is anything going to be done? I mean, common sense people say if I did this in my job, I'd be fired.
Well, I hope that he has a short shelf life, because I would think that the new Attorney General would insist on having a new Deputy Attorney General. We have wanted to speak to Mr. Rosenstein regarding this meeting that took place shortly before the special counsel was appointed. We've wanted to talk to him about his involvement late in the FISA warrant process with regard to Carter Page and a few other matters. We had it set up in early October. It didn't suit everyone on Capitol Hill, and the timing in terms of the amount of time available to ask the dozens of pages of questions we had for him didn't work. It fell apart. We've tried ever since to get him back. I would suggest that at this point it's something for Lindsey Graham, the new chairman of the Senate Judiciary Committee, to take up, and certainly should be something that the Inspector General of the Justice Department takes up with him, because he is right now looking into the whole issue surrounding the Carter Page FISA warrant application. That actually should be expanded to cover a number of other things regarding the so-called Russia investigation.
You know, Greg, what I find ironic about Rosenstein, is there a more conflicted character in this tragic play? He signs the fourth FISA after this thing has been widely debunked. Not only that, he is the prosecuting United States attorney on the Uranium One case, which has obviously been a political hot potato. How has he seemed to avoid all of this? I mean, he's a central figure in this entire scandal.
Yeah, the Code of Federal Regulations that governs Rod Rosenstein and others involved in this it's very specific. It says if you have a personal or political involvement in a case or with somebody else involved in the case, you must disqualify yourself. It's not maybe or a gee, I might. It's mandatory. Rosenstein has ignored the regulations and the Code of Professional Responsibility with impunity. This is a guy who's been interviewed by Robert Mueller, the special counsel, as a key witness in the case, and yet Rosenstein presides over the case. This is the ultimate conflict of interest, and instead of accusing William Barr or Matt Whitaker of a conflict of interest, let's all take a look at Rod Rosenstein. He should have been kicked off of this case from the beginning.
Right, it's amazing. Everybody wants recusals except Rosenstein.
Right.
Democrat side. Gentlemen, thanks a lot for joining me. I really appreciate it. After the break, one Democratic congressman had a Christmas-themed meltdown on Capitol Hill. We'll show you the tape. You don't want to miss it. Stay with us.
Thank God there wasn't a wall that stopped him from seeking refuge in Egypt. Thank God that wall wasn't there. And thank God there was an administration like this, or he would have too have perished.
Well, how do you even respond to that? Here to discuss this and more, Campus Reform Editor-in-Chief Lawrence Jones, the author of the best-selling book, Jesus is Risen, attorney David Limbaugh, who, full disclosure, has done some legal work for me, and former federal attorney Emily Compagno. Thanks all for joining us. Lawrence, I'll go to you first. You notice how he had to get the PC talking point in there, too? Christmas? But it's the holiday season, too, for all the PC folks out there. But isn't this just another disingenuous argument by a liberal Democrat? They cite religion when it's convenient, yet when it comes to social issues, they'll attack you endlessly.
They never love Jesus until it's time to make some political argument. You know, the interesting thing about this is that none of these people are advocating for life from conception. All these abortions that take place, they get thousands and thousands of dollars from Planned Parenthood to make sure there's laws to protect. I mean, it's completely decimated my community. And by the way, the story of Jesus, he went to die for our sins. That is the story about Jesus. He was born for our sins, you know, and to go on the cross.
Yeah, the congressman missed a few details.
Yeah, he doesn't. Yeah, exactly. So obviously he doesn't read the Bible. He's only using it for his political agenda.
Well, David, no better person to have on given your book. But you know what I find incredibly disingenuous about this as well? Not just the use of religion conveniently for Democrats. It's also the compassion angle he thinks he's trying to take, while he ignores the fact that the United States has been the most generous country on earth when it comes to legal immigrants. We just ask that you come here legally. This is entirely disingenuous.
This is such demagoguery, Dan. Did you see the stunning disrespect he showed for Secretary Nielsen?
Yeah,
I've never seen. Liberals are supposed to respect women. He called her a liar. He called her remorseless, and he walked out right after he'd asked her a question when she started talking. He talks about her being a liar because she supposedly said that we don't separate children. Well, we don't. That's not the policy. The policy is to enforce the law, and he knows that. This is pure liberal demagoguery and propaganda, and their purpose is to demonize Republicans as racist and as heartless, and it's shameless what they're doing.
You know, Emily, I don't know if you saw that, but it was unbelievably disrespectful. The congressman, while DHS Secretary Nielsen was talking, gets up and leaves. David, you pointed out it was really grotesque to watch. But Emily, from your perspective, being an attorney, this policy, this so-called separation of children policy, because it's not a policy, it's actually a 2015 policy, the Flores consent decree. This is not new to Donald Trump. We cannot hold these children in detention for, I believe it to be more than 20 days. I don't even understand what they're suggesting. What are they suggesting? We detain children for more than 20 days? Have you heard any serious proposals to combat this from the Democrats?
No, exactly. And that's why I have such an issue with this. Frankly, it's the tip of the iceberg. My issue with Rep. Gutierrez, who has been wasting our taxpayer dollars for the 25 years that he has served in Congress. So during that time, not only does he clearly not know the law, as you just said, but he's taken no steps to articulate it or to afford specificity both for our citizens or those seeking asylum. In his grandstanding in front of Secretary Nielsen, he said those who are fearing for their lives nebulously or from sickness, which obviously has no part in a discussion on the actual laws. I want to point out for viewers as well that this winner, in those 25 years, sponsored only 4 bills that were enacted, 2 of which had to do with naming a post office, and 1 had to do with minting a coin. He was officially reproved by the House Committee on Ethics for mismanaging funds and arrested outside of Congress this year. And that also is just the tip of the heap. So I do want to point out that it's a good thing that he's retiring, and I wish him well, but hopefully moving forward, we have actual legislators there that are earning their taxpayer dollars, that we are paying for their salary, so that moving forward, our immigration and border security stance will be clear.
Or just take the president's deal. I mean, a lot of these people, they complain about the president being anti-immigrant, but the president offered them a deal on DACA. Just give them border security, but they're not interested in this. The Democrats want open borders, and that's simply put. Look, I'm a reasonable person. I'm a libertarian. I believe in some type of immigration reform, but we got to secure the border. We can't make the mistakes that Ronald Reagan made and had put the cart before the horse. He did this. We've done this before. We've given amnesty, and then they said they were going to give us border security, and that didn't happen. It was a grave mistake.
Yeah. David, Are the Democrats going to propose anything on immigration outside of these ridiculous compassion arguments? Again, we've taken in millions of immigrants, and I wonder as well, where's the compassion for the American taxpayer? We have people in this country who work very hard, and a class of legal immigrants who worked hard to come here. Where's the respect for people who waited in line? Like I said, my wife being one of them, who came to the country legally.
They do not, as Lawrence said, they are for open borders. They do not want to enforce the wall, or enforce the border. They oppose a wall. They always pretend that they'll promise that they'll give us border security if we give them amnesty and DACA and that kind of thing. And they always breach their promise. Republicans have got to realize you can't compromise with people like this, except on certain issues like the criminal reform, prison reform bill. But on immigration, no. They want to get as many Democratic voters across the border and turn the entire United States into California, where we don't have assimilation, we don't have people that come in embracing our civic way of life and our Constitution, and that will spell the death of this country as founded.
Lawrence, David, Emily, thanks a lot. More of this special edition of Hannity right after the break. Nancy Pelosi singing and dancing. We have the video. You're not going to want to miss this one. Directly ahead. All right, welcome back to this special edition of Hannity, Law and Order in America. Nancy Pelosi seems to be getting excited about her upcoming leadership position. Last night, she was caught on camera singing and dancing at a D.C. bar. Check this out. Got some moves. All right, that's all the time we have left this evening. Before you go, Christmas is less than a week away, so if you're looking for the perfect last-minute gift, make sure to check out my new book, Spygate, the attempted sabotage of Donald J. Trump. As always, thank you for being with us tonight. Laura Ingraham is up next. Laura.